Well, I greet you and I will introduce myself and then we start rolling. My name is Johannes Birringer and your teacher, Dr. Majeed Mohammed, invited me to make a small address talking about work that could be of interest to you related to your studies in literature, drama, music and dance. And I don't know exactly your areas of study, but if they involve the theater, I will be able to speak to you about some of my experiences. I have to do it in English. This current film is composed in my lockdown retreat in Germany, in a small town. And my usual place of work is in London at Brunel University Art Department, where I teach mostly theater dance in connection with new media. So I have tried to become more involved in working with film, along with sound and music, and both spoken word and physical theater. My passion, my love is with dance. And what I will show you in the next hour are small examples of the work that I create, both together with students, on my own, and with my company. And this work is considered experimental, so it's not mainstream, yeah? But let me explain what experimental can mean for you to study. I will make very short films, perhaps 5-6 minutes each, and then string them together in one longer film. So you have maybe 1 hour of material from Johannes. So where did I start? I started like you as a student of theater and literature. And I remember we were, of course, looking at texts, yeah. I was going to university in Germany, then in the United States. I also was in England for a year. And my interest was in old theater, yeah. Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe. I remember my favorite play, I don't know why, but it was called Dr. Faustus. And I actually have many editions of this play in my little library here. Here you see an old cover of the book that has the text, yeah? Because this particular Faustus character was playing with magic, yeah? Modern plays, here's a French play, yeah? I don't know how far you read international drama, yeah? This is a French play, yeah? Wonderful, wonderful play. Combat de nègres et de chiens. And well, my professor said to me, this is text. But in the theater, we perform. And so the performance is coming out of the text or going beyond the text, and it comes alive as performance on stage with actors, with musicians. Yeah. So he then taught me not to look at the text, but to read from the words into how you imagine these words to come alive. And the words could be also instructions for movement, for action, for physical poetry, for visual and oral, auditory poetry. You hear my words and you see my gestures, You also see my costume if I were to put on a mask or a disguise, So my first introduction will end here, but I will now show you a small painting I made yesterday, inspired by a Swiss artist who, in his own way, was inspired, I think, by cave paintings. What do you see here? Well, what I saw was moving figures drawn in motion and becoming, for me, a scene. And when I draw, I always think about movement in theater. How do I move the actors? How do I move the sound across the space? How do I design the scenography in which I then create the poetry of text, of music, of sound, and of choreography? So when I come back after a short intermission, I will now show you a dance film that I recorded 2 years ago. And this is a gift to you because I know so little about theater in Iraq, dance in Iraq. I have never been to your country, but I have been very fortunate in meeting artists from all over the world. And 2 years ago in London, I had invited a group, a choreographer, who is now in exile and lives in Sweden. And he performed a piece for us in London, which I have now placed on film for you. Now, I noticed it was becoming quite dark here in my little corner, so I turned on a small light. I'd like you to watch this performance with perhaps a few questions in mind. What are you seeing? How do you read the performance? How do you perceive its quality of the scenario? Mind you, it's in the theater, it's quite dark. The camera needs to really find the actor. If you shoot outdoors during the daylight, the colors will be brighter, Like I had this lamp off before, so Naya, you can still see me. What are the things you hear? Sound. How do you begin to feel a sense of the space? Is it large? Is it a small room? Are there any objects in the room? Is there a design that makes you think you are in a particular space? Or is it abstract and open for your imagination? What does it mean to have objects in a space? How does the light create an atmosphere and also singles out perhaps the open or the closed space in which the actor is portrayed. Character or actor or dancer, yeah? For me, movement and dance creates characters in space, in time. And if you have a text or a drama, of course, it's the same. You have a fictional world that you create, and through your actors, you build this world and the action. Yeah? And action for me is important. But poetry can also be without action. It can be in the sound of the music and the words, and it can be in the gestures of the movement, yeah? So first, let us watch this dance performance. It's created by Iraqi Bodies, a company that is now in exile, choreographed by Anbar-Dept in conjunction with his partner, Josephine Gray, with whom he now works. And in his company, he has many guest artists that are performing with him. And he also gave a workshop at my symposium in London. Very beautiful approach to how he uses the body to express. Enjoy. So I'm back, and after having shown you this film, Rite of Exile, I want to return to the notion of the cave, an underground space, which perhaps is very dark. You cannot see, but you can hear and you can sense, and perhaps in the darkness you can also adjust your level of eyesight and vision. And I wonder, the early cave paintings and drawings that have been found, whether the artists who were drawing them were able to see what they were drawing, or whether they could perhaps only feel the wall of the cave and they were touching that environment and leaving an imprint. The next film I will show you is shorter. It is an interview that my students made with me after I was asked to speak about dance, theater, and technology. And since in my own work with the Design and Performance Lab, the Dept lab, I create very large installations that are designed to be explored by the audience. I try to speak to my students about how you are touched inside a space and how you touch the environment, and how perhaps through your physical experience, your bodily experience, you can understand better how powerful theater can be as a breathing space. The way artists in the caves perhaps represent, you can't get back in. You just distracted my whole thought, Kevin. So, did you stop the camera?
No, apologies, Johannes. Would you like to start again?
Yeah, well, I have to, but now I've forgotten what I said. Okay, stop. Yeah, my name is Johannes Birringer. I'm a choreographer and media artist, and I'm also a professor of performance technologies. I was brought up to study literature and theater from a scholarly point of view, actually. And my first encounter with performed theater was Shakespeare. This was at the time when I still lived in Germany. Then when I moved to the United States, I wanted to be more involved in the making of theater. I, of course, went to see Shakespeare performances, but I very gradually lost interest in spoken word theater, and I basically have not pursued it. The most exciting theater for me was not dramatic theater, but dance theater. Theater is most alive when I can see people moving on stage. I strive to create work that is sensual and allows an experience that is multisensorial. I give you one example. In one of the chemispheres where we had built beautiful range of costumes, Michel Danjou was working on particular materials for the wearables. And then we had the opportunity to invite a group of vision impaired and blind people from the Ealing Association of the Blind. It was the first time I thought of my work as also opening itself up to people of different abilities with different perceptions. And so our installation invited the blind people to come and be inside for an hour and a half. And it was a very beautiful experience because they touched the actors, they touched the fabrics that we had suspended from the ceiling, and they listened to the sounds that the costumes were making.
And then we asked them to tell us what they, so to speak, perceived or saw in their imagination, and they told us so many things that they saw, even though they were blind, yeah, which for me was very exciting. And I may add, one of the blind persons who came to our performance had a blind dog with her. The dog also enjoyed our performance very much. I could see it from the reaction. Technology can enhance your physiological and biological and psychological, being in the world. So, for example, we mentioned people with disabilities. A wheelchair or a blind cane or hearing aids are extensions of the body. Yeah? In the same sense, you could say that newer technologies are creating new challenges to us. They may open up possibilities and they may also close down other potentials. I learned this philosophical proposition in the 60s from Canadian scholar Marshall McLuhan, who said our communication media are extensions of ourselves. And each era, yeah, will have to adopt the tools that the engineers and designers are creating for us. The question is whether you have a critical perception of these tools and whether you politically think that every tool is good, yeah? I think we could agree that nuclear bombs have not helped us too much, yeah? And the development of a control society may not be, in the humanistic sense, what we really wanted. And currently, I think we're seeing more and more control systems being set into place. And that's a very disturbing development because it ultimately interferes with your privacy and your freedom of choice. Technological wearables that we have designed are designed to change your potential or give it a somewhat different direction. Yeah? So you are finding out that certain elements of your behavior are restricted. We also, as human beings in the current society in which we live, we're grappling with our new devices all the time, and we are online a lot. Think of what's happening in the market, yeah, with the objects we are meant to buy and consume. Yeah, they create sometimes particular predicaments. You can interrogate the machine system or the technical instruments that you're working with, and then you can come up with your answers to our control society. It is, of course, possible to even imagine many situations where a system, yeah, when you make a phone call and you're talking to a computer, or when you go to the airport and you're instructed to do certain things, it's running through a controlled system, and you are enacting the task. Yeah? So in that sense, we are becoming servants of the machine. And that's why I think in music they have songs like Rage Against the Machine, right? Which is funny, especially when you think of certain bands who created their music through the computer, yeah? There was a German band back in the days that was called Kraftwerk, yeah? They worked with computers and their songs were computer generated. But the songs were also critical of that kind of generation of commands. So it's a beautiful contradiction, yeah? That as artists we are generating artificial intelligence machines, but we're trying to also be critical of them. Aren't we recording too much? breathing as a living force is important for these kind of installations, because they work through resonance, through vibration, through modes of affect that are perhaps psychologically more difficult to define, but I think they can be perceived by all living organisms. They could be perceived by plants. So if I did an installation with plants and used a particular light, and particular sound, the plants could have a very good experience too. Well, as a member of the human race, I of course imagine humanity to be the term that connects us all into those who dwell on this planet, and so we're dwellers, and in that sense we share also a fragile environment, and we share resources, and we I think need to understand how we depend on one another. So for me, a humanistic understanding of humanity means we're all equal. Technology sometimes hinders you to go beyond it. I have no internet at home because I don't think it's a very good balance in our lives. If we work and then if we go into our private realm and we're still online. So I don't have a telephone, I don't have an internet access at home. But of course I write at home, I read, I cook, and I have a laptop, so I can write down some of my thoughts on my laptop, But I want to still have a part in my life. Like, I come from a village in the countryside. This is where I was born, and I like being in a forest. So I think being in a forest is as important to me as working with technologies. When you go to some events that are commercially motivated, technologies are used as bombardment, as entertainment, as impressing the audience through spectacle, as discotheque, what do you do when people communicate in quick sentences on Twitter? What do you do with SMS and online communication if it's becoming quicker and shorter and permanent, I cannot yet see where that's going, but it's not helpful for me, I think, this compression. I feel it's quite suffocating. So I'm hoping that in the work that I can contribute to the arts, I create breathing room. When you are suffused in an immersive cataclysm, of bombardment, I don't think you can breathe. Breathing together, I think, actually would also allow a perception of the other as someone that is sharing the same environment. An emphasis on breath underlies some of my work with the dancers. So even when we work with technology, we're starting with the breath and with breathing. And I believe that our society, I think, has maybe lost an understanding of the importance of breathing together. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thank
I
you.
hope so.
Well, that was the film we shot at my university last year. And to give you a little bit more context, the chemospheres or kinetic atmospheres I'm speaking about are performance installations, theater or dance installations that bring the audience into the space which I have constructed. Objects, fabrics, projections with film, sound, multi-channel audio. There are dancers, there are materials in space, dancers wearing these interesting, beautiful costumes that make sound. The dancers can generate sound and transmit. I now even include some virtual reality stations inside the installation, so the audience comes to one point and they're given, oh, I don't have the VR kit here, but they're given things to put on. Yeah, you could think of headphones that send information to your audience. And of course, audiences have smartphones. You allow them to use them. Yeah, you can give them an app, and they can connect into the space. So for me, theater, there's a book that I used to read when I was younger on anthropology by Richard Schechner. Yeah. Today, I still find myself drawn to anthropology, architecture, film, music. Yeah, I learned so much from composers to think about how sound affects you. So the key ideas for me in theater is space, to understand the space in which you want to work. So when you go out there to make new work, or to study what theater can be, think about the space, the architectural shape of the environment where theater happens. This can be inside a particular theater building. It can be in a factory, in a warehouse, in an abandoned building, can be under a bridge. It can be in the open. Festivals, if you think of music festivals, rituals, yeah? If you think about the study of anthropology as a study of ritual, like sport, yeah, it takes place in a kind of a sports field. So the field becomes the space where the competition is taking place, yeah. The game, the play, yeah. I used to be a goalkeeper playing football, and the reactions I learned to respond helped me also to understand my body. So when I think of dance, it has to do with how I perceive and experience movement. And if you think of dance in theater, I understand there to be two important ways to experience movement. The movement is to the music, yeah, with the music, and it becomes a unit, yeah, like when dancers respond to percussion or to a beat or to, yeah, a particular kind of music that drives them. So some choreographers and some movement makers, they work to the music. The other possibility is to create your movement and your action, your theatrical action, in silence, independently of sound. And then you use a live or pre-recorded sound that is not in sync with the movement, but works a little bit against it or behind it or around it or pushes it or challenges it. So the sound combines with the movement, yeah? And I don't have any objects here to make this example, but I remember the theater director, Robert Wilson, in a talk once saying, if you have, let's say you have, this is a box, yeah? if you have a box on a table and a lamp, you see a box and a lamp, yeah? But if you place, let's say, a bowl of oranges next to the lamp, it's a different situation, it's a different combination. Or if you place some flowing water, trickling down next to the lamp, you have two elements that may not make sense directly. So you need to let the lamp and the water work on your imagination. So this last film that you saw with the interview is called Spaces of Imagination. And I will end now with the last film that I'm showing you today, which perhaps does not combine drama, theater, dance, and music in the way you would expect. But I'd like to tell you the story. And I wish to inspire you to go out and do something that is similar or that makes you think you can combine elements into a theatrical assemblage, a theatrical cosmos, a theatrical fiction. So this next film is created by myself, just me. I don't know how I did it, but I had the camera with me, and it was created outdoors. So it's a solo performance. But the background was that I have a friend, a woman friend who's a director in the Ukraine, former part of the Soviet Union, now independent. And she has been very sad and preoccupied with the situation in her country because there's a conflict between the Eastern Ukraine and the Western Ukraine, which you may know about. Yeah, there have been military conflicts and social unrest and political complications. So my friend, who is a theater director currently working with young people in the school, Olga Daniliuk, she was in Kiev and said to me, I'm working with these school children in the conflict zone, in the Donbass. And they are very upset and very uncertain about their future. And they're hoping to have some encouragement. And so I have invented this idea that you, Johannes, you are a friend corresponding to them from far away from New York. And you are writing them some letters to encourage them. Because the little village that they live in the Ukraine is called Nueva York. It's like New York or something. It's a strange coincidence that this village is called New York. So I composed 3 letters and I sent the letters to them through an audio message. And they were working on a theater performance that they were going to stage in a big house with different rooms. And the audience would walk through the rooms and then see the young people perform. And 1 or 2 of the rooms also would have video projection. So I thought, this is interesting. What could I send to the young people as a message of hope? How you think about theater as transformation, theater as a way to move your audience into a different imaginative area. So I made a short film about becoming a tree, and I sent it to them, and they were very happy, and they put the film in one of the rooms, so when the audience comes, they also see this film. So I end here by wishing you all the best with your own studies, whether it's text, drama, or whether it's how drama becomes alive in dramatic situations. And we find ourselves at the moment in a very dramatic situation with the pandemic. And if you can walk outside a little bit into the park or into a garden, perhaps you can think of becoming a bird, becoming a tree, like in Ovid's Metamorphosis. You change, and maybe you help your audience to see this change through your performance. I wish you the best. Take care. Goodbye.
Into the sea, wipe down, go home, get on with their life.
Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? Cinnamon, where you gonna run to? Where you gonna run to? All on that day, will I run to the rock? Please hide me and run to the rock. Please hide me and run to the rock. Please hide me, Lord, all on that day. But the rock cried out, I can't hide you, the rock cried out. I can't hide you, the rock cried out. I ain't gonna hide you down all on that day. I said, rock, what's the matter with you, rock? Don't you see I need you, rock? Lord, 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 all on that day. So I ran to the river, it was bleeding to run to the sea. It was bleeding to run to the sea. It was bleeding all on that day. So I ran to the river, it was boiling, I ran to the sea. It was boiling, I ran to the sea. It was boiling all on that day. So I ran to the Lord. Please hide me, Lord. Don't you see me praying? Don't you see me down here praying? But the Lord said, go to the devil. The Lord said, go to the devil. He said, go to the devil all on that day. So I